coming to you from sunny Denver, Colorado. Get ready for your weekly dose of unscripted conversation all about the housing industry in the Centennial State. Although their specialty is in mortgages, in this show they are transcending lending. And now, your host, the most unconventional guys in conventional lending, the Mortgage InLaws.
Hello and welcome to the inaugural Transcending Lending podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brent Blankenburg, and my counterpart,
Dylan Herrera.
And we are the Mortgage InLaws. Really excited about doing this podcast. We're mortgage loan originators here in the Denver metro area and have a lot of conversations. It's a super hot market here in Denver. A lot of people talking about housing, regardless of whether or not they're in the housing industry. So we're having conversations with people that have very interesting things to say every week. And we just thought, what the heck, we might as well, record these conversations and hopefully someone can get something out of it. Dylan and I are both avid podcast listeners ourselves. So we've been thinking about this for a long time. I personally listen to Joe Rogan Experience a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's actually how I got started listening to podcasts, is Joe Rogan. So that was a big one for me. I think I've been listening to podcasts for about 3 years, and I think you mentioned you've been closer to 5.
Yep. I got started Radio Lab actually back in 2010 and been listening to that one, This American Life, a lot of Tim Ferriss stuff, Brian Callen. So that's what I listen to. What do you listen to these days?
A lot of the same stuff. I'd say the biggest one for me is Tim Ferriss. I think I've probably listened to every single episode of his. So he just came out with his book, Tools for Titans. So it's basically a summary of all of his podcasts. So it's interesting to actually go back through because I have listened to just about every one. I'd say that's the primary one. And then Joe Rogan, of course, it's just always a good laugh and obviously some knowledge there as well.
Yeah. So we listen to those. Those are obviously national podcasts that are very broad spectrum about what they're about. So we figured we would make this and have it more targeted to who we're looking to talk to. So this podcast is going to be based around the housing industry in general. So very generally speaking, we're going to have experts from all areas of this industry and from the Denver metro area, extending probably further south to Colorado Springs, as far north as Fort Collins, and then probably eventually get some people from Grand Junction as well. So it's going to be largely, heavily based in Colorado here, but certainly there will be information as well that is applicable to all areas of the country. And we're just going to have a new expert on every week. We will try to record and put one of these out every week, pending our schedules, and talk about whatever those individual experts, what their actual expertise is. So we very much encourage feedback on who you would like to have us to have on the show, whether that is an actual individual person or a specific industry representative you'd like to hear from. So please let us know who you'd like to hear from, and we'll do what we can to schedule someone on here.
It is funny when you're talking about like people wanting to learn about the industry, even people that aren't in the industry, just wanting to learn. But me personally, that's actually probably the thing I'm most excited about, is learning these different areas of the industry I'm actually in. So even when it comes to appraisals, I'm sure it's 95% of stuff that I don't know really what goes into the appraisal. I just get the appraisal back. But it is going to be interesting to actually talk to these experts in their fields and learn more myself. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and people just these days are having far less conversations with random people. I feel like people walk around looking at their cell phone, texting, so they're less able to just start up conversations with random people. So because of the era that we're in here, the digital age, and people communicating face-to-face far less often, hopefully some people can listen to this podcast and hear some conversations that they otherwise wouldn't in the course of their daily life.
That is very true. And actually, now that you say that, talking about being in the digital age, I feel like the mortgage industry in general is probably some of the harder stuff to find online about like detailed work on what goes into things. So if you look up stuff on appraisals, it's hard to find a lot about what goes into it. So this is going to be hopefully informational for a lot of people.
Yeah. I know when I was starting out or looking to get into the mortgage industry before I even started, I was looking for different books on, just getting into the mortgage industry or how to be successful. And there's really not a lot out there. That it's pretty difficult to get into this industry. There's not a lot of people who want to teach you about this industry. So that's definitely a big part of what we're trying to do in the intermediate and long term, is hiring on more young people or just new people to the industry who have been thinking about a career change and are curious to hear what goes on in the mortgage world. So as far as who we expect to listen to this podcast, it's not going to be targeted to any one demographic. I would say I think that realtors and other people, title folks, appraisers, property and casualty insurance people, I think anybody in one of these tangential industries could pick up things from this podcast. So I think good for those types of people. Also, just anybody who's interested in becoming a real estate investor. And when I say real estate investor, I don't mean that you own, apartment complexes and buildings and that kind of thing. In my opinion, even if you just own one home, you are a real estate investor. Dylan's a good case study on that one. Why don't you tell a story about the first house that you purchased?
Yeah, I got lucky on the timing. So when I purchased my first house, it was out in Commerce City, Colorado. And I want to say it was 2014, beginning of 2014, roughly. And we ended up staying there for about 8 months before we moved back to Salt Lake City. And in that 8 months, the appreciation, I don't even know how much it jumped, but we ended up making about $27,000 profit on that house in 8 months, was just insane. So that went to our down payment on our house in Utah, and we're now renting that house out. It's actually been very profitable for us, and kind of blessed on the timing for that. And
yeah.
Similar to what it is now, it's a very hot market. It's been appreciating 10% for the past, 3 years, and the expected growth this year is between 8 and 10% as well. So it's a good market to be in.
Yeah, it can really change someone's financial picture. And I don't want to pretend that it's always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Not at all. We were all around for 2008 when it was not such a rosy picture. But for the average person here in America, making a salary, let's say $50,000, $60,000 a year, they have their, fixed income, and then they have fixed expenses every month. We see these people's finances all the time, and there's just not a ton of room for saving up large chunks of money and changing your financial position. So real estate, I've just run into a lot of people in the course of being in the mortgage industry where owning a house, even just a primary residence, has significantly changed the financial pictures of a lot of clients that I've come in contact with. So it's exciting to be a part of this industry and being able to help people, realize their dream of becoming homeowners as well.
Absolutely. So just to get to know us a little bit, we'll just kind of start with kind of how we came into the industry and also a little background of our story. So me personally, I was born in Miami. I was raised in Salt Lake City. I came from a big family. I'm one of 10 kids. And I always joke that I'm one of 10 kids and I grew up in Salt Lake City and I'm not Mormon. So that is something funny, but I ended up meeting my wife on a Southwest flight, and I was flying to Houston. She was flying to Oklahoma. I had a connecting flight to Denver and then Oklahoma. She hopped on the flight in Denver, and we talked briefly. I ended up asking for her number right before she got off the flight, and ended up moving in her parents' basement with her 2 months later. And actually 2 months after that, Brent was moving from Oklahoma to Denver. He moved into the same house that I was in. So it's a little awkward there, but it was that's kind of how we came into contact.
Yep. So now Dylan is married to my little sister, and
almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Thus my brother-in-law, which is where we came up with the name The Mortgage InLaws. So we've been working together now for almost a year. I hired Dylan. He was the first person who I hired underneath me, and he had just about no experience in the mortgage industry at all. He was laying carpet previous to this and just wanted to change, didn't want to work that hard his entire life and suffer the consequences on his joints and time with his family and all that kind of stuff. So he was looking for a change, and I do believe that if you have the right attitude and you're committed to being successful, and a few very basic tenets in life, you can be successful in this industry and really any other industry as well. But this one really just gives you a great opportunity to not only make a ton of money in the relatively short term, but also have the freedom to own your own time, which that's my favorite part of this job is, if we get 8, 10, 12 inches of snow up here in Colorado, that I can take the day off and go do my favorite thing, which is snowboarding in the powder. So that's how me and Dylan met.
Let's hear a little background on kind of where you grew up. I know your whole background very well. Being married to your sister, but
so I'm not from any one place in particular. So my pops works for a large oil company, and he has since I was born. So we basically moved around every about 1.5 years on average. So from the time I was born until now, I've lived in, I think, 18 different places. So I went to, I think it was 4th grade, or no, maybe 6th grade. I went to 3 different schools in 3 different states,
That's so
2
crazy.
different countries. So I moved around my whole life. I came through Colorado multiple different times through my upbringing, and it was just my favorite place. So once I hit college, it was my goal to figure out how to get back here to Colorado. So I went to school. I graduated from University of Oklahoma and set out on a path of finding a way to make my way in the world here in Colorado. So I kissed a few frogs along the way. I was previously a financial advisor and also a financial consultant for Edward Jones and TIA Cref were the 2 companies I worked for in the financial services sector. Wasn't a great fit for me at the time. I went into technology sales for a while there, and then that was back in Oklahoma, and really just realized I needed to be here in Colorado. So that is when I up and left. That was back in, I think, 2012. Yeah, 2012. Moved back here to Denver.
Yeah, that's when I met Jade, so that seems about right. I think it was the end of 2012.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan, like he said, was living in my parents' basement.
Which was also when you moved back was actually the first time I met you.
Yeah.
As well. So I think at that point, me and Jade got engaged after 2 months of meeting. So I'm pretty sure at that point, I was living in your parents' basement, engaged to your sister, and I've never met you. So.
Yeah. And by the way, Dylan's a real young cat. So back in 2012, he was really young, and
He's 20 years old. I never had a drink prior to meeting Jade, so I had my first alcoholic beverage with Jade. Actually, on the flight, I told her, I knew you were over 21 because you had a ginger ale, which was actually I never had a ginger ale, and I thought it was an alcoholic beverage. So we get a lot of laughs about that because just how naive I was and young, really.
Yep. So Jade's just a couple years older, but with him being so young and they had only known each other a couple months, the fact that he decided to move into my parents' house and that they were moving so quickly, we weren't too terribly fond of it. I didn't know him, so it was nothing personal against him. But then I moved back and displaced him from the basement, and I moved into my parents' basement. He moved upstairs to one of the bedrooms, and I went in search of what I was going to do next, and got to do a little bit of soul searching and traveling for a few months, 6 months or so, and then got into the mortgage business in 2013, and it's all gone from there. So it's the best decision I've ever made. It really hasn't been that long. It's been less than 4 years I've been in the business, and if you would have told me 4 years ago that this is what my life would look like, I don't know if I could have believed you. Even though I like to think I'm pretty optimistic, it's even hard for me to believe. So, exciting industry. I love it. Brought Dylan in last year, and we have a blast. We share an office. He could certainly have his own office, but we just feel like
definitely choose not to.
Yeah, we enjoy it. Stay on top of our files that way, but also we have a lot of fun. I always say Dylan's kind of like a puppy to work with. You get into the office and you might be in a bad mood, but you see Dylan and he'll just crack a smile instantly and start giggling or chuckling about something. So
life's too short.
Yep. So Dylan's got the great attitude.
So one real quick, I know you just briefly mentioned that your financial picture changed quite a bit from when you started. Just to go back, when you first started in the industry, 1 year after you basically got into the industry, what did that look like? I know you had quite a bit of credit card debt, and I think you only closed one loan at that time.
Yeah, so I definitely wasn't a super quick starter. The first guy that I went to work for, I will not mention his name. Good dude. He's I like the guy, but I didn't particularly learn very much from him. I don't think that he really utilized me to the best of my ability. So I was with him for the first 8 months, and for that time, I never closed a loan. And then after that, I met our current boss, Tom Nines, who has been a great mentor to me. And he really took me under his wing and brought me in, and I started learning instantly. But my 1 year mark of being in the business, I had probably closed a couple loans. I had amassed quite a bit of credit card debt because you don't get paid in this industry when you're early on. Most places are not willing to pay you a salary. Some places will pay you a draw on your commissions, which means they'll give you, let's say, $3,000 a month. But once you start making commissions, you have to pay them back that money. So if you go your first 3 months and you don't close any loans, you already owe them the first $9,000 you make in commission. And generally, the places that are even willing to get in that agreement with a new employee are banks. So banks are going to pay you a very small percentage on every loan you close. So I actually had a situation where I was about a year before I hired Dylan. I was looking to bring on a girl from Wells Fargo. She's a loan officer there, and we were going to bring her on as my junior, and it turned out the numbers did not work out. She owed Wells Fargo so much money because she was getting a draw on her commissions that she was literally trapped. She was trapped working for Wells Fargo, and she still works there right now. And not making good money. So
probably just getting further in debt. I mean,
Yep.
Unless you change the way you do things. I mean, she was already drowning when you're about to hire her. I'm sure it's only going to get worse if she's not changing the way she does things. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So anyways, 1 year into this industry, I was not in a good financial position at all, but I was super excited to be in the business. I loved this business at least as much as I love it now. Back then, I just love it. You get freedom. You get to make as much as you want to based on the work that you put in. So after that point, my financial picture started changing rapidly. So won't get into specifics, but let's just say I'm in a good position now. Was able to purchase a couple properties last year and looking to purchase another one this year. So, and like I said, the freedom is the biggest thing for me, and our team is totally built around creating the life that you want. Money is not everything, and I feel like it's a trap where people get into this mindset of, if I just had money, or if I just had this much money, I would be happy. I'd have this awesome life. But once you get on the other side of the coin to where you have that much money, you realize money does not mean happiness at all. Of course, it makes things easier, but you really have to have things in this life that fulfill you, or you're gonna
Actually,
you're gonna
Tony
be sad.
Robbins said almost that exact thing, that basically success is not more important than fulfillment. So your goal every day should be to be fulfilled rather than successful or have money. It's just, as long as you're happy, living a fulfilled life, I think you're doing something right.
Yeah, I think so. So what would you say is your favorite thing about being in this industry?
Favorite thing about being in the industry? Honestly, I grew up, like I said, with 10 or 9 siblings, and my best friends growing up were those siblings. So that being said, I didn't have a ton of friends outside of that. It was just I was really close to my family, and I loved it that way, and that's how I preferred it. With this industry, though, you do meet a lot of people, and I think I'm realizing every day, every week that I love people. So I really get to enjoy just meeting new people and having, building new relationships with people. So that's, I think, by far my favorite thing is just meeting people, getting in front of people, talking, having conversations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy to see your progress of how you've kind of grown and changed since getting in as well, and the confidence that's come with, being more successful and all that.
Yep. I mean, Jade always knew this about me. It takes a long time for me to really open up. Your dad made a joke, I think a couple weeks ago, about me coming out of my shell, and I've known him for 4 years now. And I made the joke that it takes me 4 years to really open up and get to know someone. But I think since being in this industry, that has dropped to, a couple weeks. I get comfortable with people really quick, and it's really changed that perspective for me quite a bit. So, yeah, that is very true. What about you?
Well, man, I like a lot of it. Yeah. I like the money. It's nice. I love the freedom. I guess the freedom's definitely the best part, but if I had freedom and no money, that's not that good of a situation. If I had money and no freedom, that's also not a very good situation. So I think it's just a combination of, being able to kind of be your own boss, to where, if you get in a situation like we're in, our bosses are never going to question whether or not we're in the office on any given day. We don't have to call anyone and tell someone we're not coming to the office. We could not be there for a week, and they might eventually reach out to make sure we're safe and healthy. But we get to own our own time. But at the same time, you're not self-employed. You're still a W-2 employee, which makes tax reporting and all that easier. So you really kind of get the best of both worlds. You get to have uncapped income limits or possibility, but you also get to have some kind of security. Working for a big company, we know we're in a good position. So,
yeah, I like that you say that. I actually remember when you came to visit Jade and I in Salt Lake City. We went snowboarding, and you got a business call, and you said something like, "I love making money while I'm on vacation." And I think that's what kind of triggered something for me. I'm like, wow, like that's possible. Like you don't have to be on your knees to make $1.
Yep.
So really interesting that you say that, but it is very true.
Yep. Yeah, I think we were on a chairlift up there.
We were right before we almost got in a little brawl.
That's right. Yeah, that was fun. We almost got into a little squabble with some big giant looking dude on skis in the lift line that was a little bit unhappy with his life.
He was very unhappy.
Yeah. That was fun times.
It was 3-on-1 though, so I'm glad we didn't get in a fight for his sake.
Yep.
It's a bad representation of us. I mean, we're
not
this is
fighters.
our first podcast, and we're talking about fighting. But
we're lovers, not fighters. That is for dang sure.
For sure.
The last thing I ever want to do is get in a fight.
Yep. Well, we really hope that the listeners to this podcast just get something useful out of it. Again, we are just trying to reach anybody that is interested in the industry. So if you do have a recommendation on someone that you want us to bring in a specific industry, just please reach out and let us know. And where to find us, Brent will let you know where to find us.
So we're on Instagram. We've done up till now a pretty poor job of posting on Instagram, but we're going to be better about that. So we're on Instagram at Mortgage InLaws. You can also find both of us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Brent Blankenburg
and Dylan Herrera.
Yep. And also at transcendinglending.com. Also, just, if you have questions, you'll find our contact information on one of those websites. What we do every day, almost all day, is qualify folks for home purchases and for refinances. And we love to talk with people, regardless of whether or not we end up closing a loan for someone. A lot of the conversations we have are just consultative, to where we're educating someone, about, hey, if you're looking to buy in a year, these are the things that you should do in between now and then to improve your credit score and just ensure that you get into the best situation possible when it does come that time to buy. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have suggestions about who we should talk to on the show. Or critiques about how we could do things better here, but then certainly as well, if you have questions about the mortgage industry or buying a home or refinancing, we would love to talk to you about those things.
Yeah, and also I don't know if Brent mentioned, but I think he did actually. We are on Facebook as well. So I actually got a Facebook about 5 days ago, so that's a new thing for me.
Welcome to the digital age,
Welcome
man.
to the digital
You're now
age.
on Facebook.
It's pretty crazy. So you can find us there as well and put a face to the voices. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Yep. Look forward to bringing you a lot of great content and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transcending Lending. For more episodes, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, or visit our website at transcendinglending.com. Tune in next week for another great episode.